Kenya and Tanzania have resolved to address existing trade barriers that make it difficult for business persons and traders to access markets of either countries. This at a time Kenya's trade advantage over Tanzania has reduced from 29 billion shillings back in 2013 to just 4 billion shillings last year, during which time the volume of exports to Tanzania also declined to Tanzania's advantage. Our very own Sam Kituku looks into the trade barriers and the trends over the last 7 years.
In all their engagements, they were quick to assure there were not diplomatic hostilities between the two neighboring countries. Presidents Uhuru Kenyatta and Samia Suluhu, however, fully acknowledging challenges of trade faced by business persons on both sides. A look at the trade statistics between the two countries showing a shift over the last 7 years. Kenya's exports to Tanzania has reduced from 40.5 billion shillings in 2013 to 31.4 billion shillings in 2020, a decline that has been steady especially since 2015. Over the same period, Tanzania's exports to Kenya have grown from 11.7 billion shillings in 2013 to nearly match Kenya at 27.2 billion shillings in 2020. This reducing Kenya's trade advantage from 28.8 billion shillings to just 4.2 billion shillings last year. Majority of Kenyan exports to Tanzania are soap, medicaments or substances used for medical treatment, iron and steel, accounting for between 4 and 13% of total exports to Tanzania. Other major exports include margarine, salt and chewing gum. In turn, Kenya's imports from Tanzania are majorly wood and wood products, food grains like rice and maize, and uncoated craft paper and paperboard. EAC Cabinet Secretary Adan Mohamed explaining the reason for shifting trade trends.
That manufactured products that we used to export are now increasingly being made in some of those countries themselves. And you just need to see how can you compete. Is a product made in Kenya, a product made in Uganda or Tanzania more competitive?
And as the East African community continues to implement the common market protocols, some member countries have been pursuing protectionist measures referred to as non-tariff barriers that would explain shifting trends.
Selling of tobacco products by BET, for example, into Tanzania has been a big challenge for a long time because certain duties are levied on that.
Tanzania, for instance, requires Kenyan British American Tobacco Company to use 75% of local content in making cigarettes exported to Tanzania. Tanzania has imposed an 80% higher excise on imported cigarettes. On animal products imported, Tanzania has imposed different levies on beef, milk and poultry, and pork products. A levy of over 200 shillings per kilogram imposed. For UHT and cultured milk entering Tanzania, a value-added tax of 18% applies. In Kenya, no such levies apply, including for products imported from EAC member states. For business persons arriving in Tanzania from Kenya, they'd be required to acquire a temporary business visa at $100 or 11,000 shillings. Work permits or renewals in Tanzania cost between $500 and $1,600. Tanzanians working in Kenya acquire free work permits. On tourism, tour operators from Kenya are required to offload at border points. Their Tanzanian counterparts, however, have no barriers and can easily access the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. Tanzania has been relying on a 1985 bilateral agreement between the two countries which identified tourist exchange points, an agreement that was abolished after re-establishment of the East African community. And while trade terms remained largely favorable in Kenya, in March last year, Tanzania was aggrieved by introduction of a 25% excess tax on imported glass bottles. Tanzania sued Kenya, the East African Court of Justice, securing an injunction as the matter awaits determination. Recently, Kenya denied entrance of tons of maize imported from Tanzania on reason that they contained high levels of aflatoxins. President Kenyatta has now ordered resolution of the stalemate in 2 weeks.
And some of those issues will be resolved immediately. As the president of Tanzania announced last night, like no more banning of chickens from crossing the border. And there are others which will be taken back home or remain here if it's in our case, that would require some legislative changes in some cases, because if tariffs are legislated, then they have to go through a process.
For countries that have embraced the protocols of common market, custom union, and working towards monetary union and political federation, CS Mohammed blames the protectionate inconsistencies to private sectors of the two countries.
The primary place where this resolution of this needs to happen is private sector coming together, understanding why it's important for all of them to actually enjoy the benefits of doing business in the East African community, a market of 180 million people.
And as conversations begin, the test of time will be how authorities on both sides will yield to concessions that would effectively facilitate better trade between the two countries at the risk of inadvertently affecting local industries in the respective countries. Sam Kituku, Citizen TV, Nairobi.